Hey everyone, and welcome to Sip Happens. Life's too short not to sip and tell, where love, travel, food, and a little bit of chaos all come together.
It's Ben and Dustin. We're partners in life, travel buddies, and occasional food critics.
And we're bringing you real stories from our 16 years together. The good, the messy, hilarious, and sometimes fucked up moments.
We'll be sharing everything from how we met to what it's like starting over in a new city, our throuple journey, our favorite eats, and the random adventures we somehow survive.
Plus, we'll be taking your story requests. So if you want the real behind the scenes scoops, you're in the right place.
We hope you've got a drink.
Because we've got one.
Sounds like it's time to get comfy. Now let's get into it.
Hey friends, did you miss us? We're back. Normally we would start with not today, but today we're kind of doing a yes today. My yes today would just be I'm super thankful for all of you who have reached out and just said how much you appreciate the podcast. That's like huge to me, well to us. And sometimes I kind of forget about it. So then when people reach out about things, I'm like, how did you know that? And they're like, episode 2, and I'm like, oh, there's that. So I just want to say thank you for all of you who have reached out and really love this and appreciate it as much as we love doing it. And also all of you who have reached out and were like, you didn't put one out last week and my week is fucked up. I apologize. It's been a very busy week. And so here we are. So I just want to say we appreciate you and thank you for appreciating us.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. There's been a lot of support and some angst about us not posting last week. So it's appreciated. I apologize. We apologize. It wasn't intentional. The week just kind of got away from us. So sorry about that. But anyways, here we are. So we're not really going to get political, but we do have to state the obvious. Trump and Elon kicking off Pride Month with a very public spat.
Honey.
I mean, I can't, but also I can. These straight men are somehow messier than the gays they love to hate and legislate against. The shade being thrown, I'm absolutely here for it. The irony, chef's kiss. It's giving petty breakup energy, not straight bro fallout. And happening during June, which is Pride Month, absolutely iconic. Honestly, not demure, very, very messy, very ugly, petty, gay breakup, especially with them being the white privileged, straight, card-holding individuals they portray. Anyway, take that how you want, but it had to be said. This isn't just a little feud. It's petty, it's public, and it's got more drama than the Real Housewives reunion. And that's all I've got to say about that. So with that being said, we're going to kick off Pride Month, the month of June, with our coming out stories. So buckle up and get ready.
All right, so we are sipping on just Pinot Grigio, nothing crazy. You know, Dustin's blood type.
I was going to say that is my blood type.
But the big thing on TikTok and everything the past week has been the Sauvignon Blanc with frozen jalapenos in it. So tonight when we were out at our favorite wine bar, we did pick up a bottle of Artepado Sauvignon Blanc, and we do have some Trader Joe's sweet hot jalapenos in the freezer. So that is just preparing for next week. So y'all stay tuned for that. We're excited.
Stay tuned. The folks at the wine bar were not super impressed that we were putting jalapenos in Sauv Blanc. Well, some of them were, but the sommelier was like, why would you put jalapenos in Sauv Blanc? But, you know.
Because TikTok did it and we want to.
And then there was a wine rep there today that was like, Do you just want to drink Sauv Blanc? Like, there's other wines if you're not interested, and we can get you something else. And I was like, no, like, I'm not a huge Sauv Blanc person, but thanks to our favorite wine shop, I've come around to some Sauv Blancs. I just don't love the grassiness of most of them. But there's been some nice ones that we've had. So we grabbed one of those bottles tonight. I think he was just mad because he didn't have a Sauv Blanc to offer for purchase tonight. He, I think, had mostly reds. I think he did have a Chardonnay, which Ben tried and it was great. But he didn't have a Sauv Blanc, so I think his little feelings were hurt. But sorry about it. But anyways, when he was walking out, I was petty and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much for your help tonight. I really appreciate it."
You petty what?
I mean, I had to give him a little something.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyways, back to our coming out stories.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a little secret to tell y'all. So put your ear up to the speaker. You there? You ready? Oops, we're gay. Surprise.
Surprise.
All right, so this is kind of our coming out story, and it's Pride Month, so we just thought you should know.
Happy Pride.
Some of you already know of this, some of you don't. Some of you that do know are probably going to find out more to the story, so buckle up. So, before coming out, what were the earliest signs, maybe to you or others, about your identity?
So there were, okay, I've got 2 points of this, and maybe one of them is a little premature. So I went to a after school care, and we oftentimes had, stop laughing. Stop laughing.
I fucking can't. Y'all get ready. Buckle up.
I wasn't even going there, but now I'm gonna have to because you're laughing at me.
Oh my god. Never mind. Y'all just.
This was
stay tuned.
before the story that Ben's laughing about, but I now have to tell you that at some point.
Are you gonna bring up you twirling around the Christmas tree too, or not?
No,
Oh,
I wasn't. But,
well, I will.
But
Sorry.
I'm sure
Continue.
you would. All right. Anyways, so back in after school care, we had like slumber parties where we were like locked in the after school care building or whatever, because we were young and we had counselors there or whatever.
And you had no shoes.
I've always had shoes. So, side note, this is going to be all over the place. So, really prepare yourselves. So, back, not at all associated with the story, but since Ben mentioned the shoes, I feel like it needs to be referenced. So, back in church camp, we would come to these other church camps outside of Mississippi, which is where I was born and raised. And we would all go around and be like, "Oh, where are you from?" And all of my church group would be like, "Oh, we're from Mississippi." And automatically they would look down at our feet to see if we had on shoes because, the preconceived notion is that people from Mississippi don't have shoes. I've always had shoes, for the record. But because I told Ben that story once, he'll never let it go.
Surprise.
For those of y'all that know Ben, the bitch doesn't let shit go.
I remember everything.
He's like a plunger. He will pull that shit up from the deepest, darkest places. Just because. Anyways, back to your question. So at this said after school care, we had our slumber parties on Friday nights. And the first time I was ever teased about being gay, and at that point I really didn't know I was gay. Didn't really know what gay was, but apparently these other people did. So I had this guy friend that we kind of bonded, and at sleepover, we put our little pallets and sleeping bags, whatever, down in the back of the room. And he was like, "Oh, will you make sure you sleep next to me because I don't want to be here by myself." And of course I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course." And so I was teased about being gay because me and I think his name was Robert, were bonded, and he wanted me to sleep next to him, and that was perceived as gay. And looking back on it, maybe it was. Maybe we are both gay. I don't know him to this day, but maybe it was part of that. But we had some type of bond. And so maybe looking back on life, I didn't realize it at the time, but maybe looking back, maybe that was kind of the first sign of my sexuality. Um, I will say, skipping forward many, many years to my pulling up to my freshman year in high school, my mom was driving up and we were so in our school system, the high school was not all together. So they like to separate out how the different sections of a typical grade school would be. So, like from typical elementary school into middle school, we had a gap school of like the sixth grade. So it was an intermediate between elementary school and middle school, where most schools would be sixth grade would just be included in middle school. Same thing happened with high school. So we had a gap year between middle school and high school. So our freshman year was in a solitary school that was just the ninth graders and freshmen. So I remember pulling up with my mom was driving, of course, because I wasn't of age. And it was probably at least the first time I remember acknowledging the fact that I had an attraction to a man. So there's this guy standing on the stairs, and I was like, oh my God. Like, somebody grew up over the summer, because I knew him from obviously previous years of school. But that was the first time I guess, had the inclination or thoughts of being actually attracted to a male. By the way, he was not gay at all. He was very much a jock type, which I know that might not be surprising to you. But anyways, that was kind of two-part story and a lot of chaos in between, thanks to Benjamin.
You're welcome.
So if you tracked with that, that was kind of my first inclinations of being gay, potentially as a younger child, and then starting to come to the realization as an older teen of my sexuality. How what do you have for your earliest signs?
So there are definitely some pictures of me like dressing up in like my sister's dresses and necklaces and things, and I would come out and say that I was somebody visiting. Like I don't really know that. Like I don't know. That was just maybe that was just my escape or whatnot. I was raised extremely religious, so being gay was not even an option. So looking back, maybe that was just a chance for me to be somebody. Well, maybe that was like a glimpse of me to be who I wanted to be. Not that I wanted to wear dresses or anything like that, but like that just wasn't accepted at all growing up. Um, so I don't know. That just was kind of where I was back then, I guess.
So I guess talking about that a little bit, and you talking about me twirling around the Christmas tree.
You were.
So I do remember being a younger child when we first moved from Meridian, Mississippi, which is where I was born. We moved to the Jackson area for my dad's job, and we lived in this little single wide trailer that was not really a trailer. It was temporary housing, if you will. And it was in the back parking lot of the corporate office of where my dad was transferring to. And I remember putting on my mom's high heels and prancing around the trailer, um, because we weren't allowed to go outside and play or ride our bikes or anything, because there was equipment and people were coming in and out, because it was an asphalt company. So there was a lot of big machinery around. So I found other things to occupy my time with, and that was apparently with my mom's high heel shoes.
You probably were just glad you finally had shoes.
Here we go. We've already discussed this. Jesus Christ.
Just
Moving on.
say-
Whatever. Fuck you. With all the love.
Sure, Jan.
So, did you have any role models or media representation when you were growing up thinking that you were gay?
So once again, I was raised extremely religious. So I mean, I don't really think Bob the Tomato or Larry the Cucumber was really, you know,
Not Veggie Tales.
a representation of being gay. Probably my realest moment was I went to Walmart with my sister's first husband, and
I'm sure she'll love that comment.
probably that part, and I got Ricky Martin's like album with like "Living La Vida Loca," and it was just kind of like if he can live this life and he can be so hot, and he still is so fucking hot, it's ridiculous. He gets hotter the older he gets. But anyways, back to that. Um, I don't know. That just was like maybe my first moment of like, wow, if he can do this, then like that's not abnormal, I guess. So he was kind of always my crush and all of that, and probably still to this day, honestly.
So, I don't know that I had any role models necessarily, but there were definitely some things that piqued my interest, if you will. Um, it was little things like Ricky Martin definitely was one of those because I, of course, had a CD. I know that dates me. At least it wasn't a cassette, but it was a CD. There's also, so we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I saved up my money to go to Abercrombie and Fitch to buy a pair of cargo shorts, which apparently are coming back around, which I'm not here for, by the way.
Because Dustin wears 2-inch diapers.
Fuck off. Not untrue, but really. Anyways, but I really wanted to go there and buy things because of the male models that were posted up on the wall. And then the biggest thing was you got a bag to take home your purchases, and it had said half naked man on them. So, of course, all the cool kids were wearing Abercrombie and Fitch. So, it wasn't necessarily about the clothes looking back on it as it was. I mean, maybe it was a little bit about the clothes because I wanted to be a cool kid. But that bag to take home, I mean,
Baby, the bag was where it was at.
and they sprayed their cologne all through the store. It was a whole experience. And I wasn't mad at it as a teenager.
So, did you have any fears or concerns that held you back from coming out?
I think, like what you said, came from a very religious background, was in church, not quite as much as you were, but raised Southern Baptist. We were there almost as many times as the doors were unlocked. We had puppet ministry, we had youth choir, we had youth group, we had, of course, the regular Sunday and Sunday night services, and then we had the lunches that we would go out to with youth groups and all of that. Um, so I think that was probably my biggest hang up. Um, the other thing, and maybe we'll get into this later, but um, there's a point in time where I was curious about my sexuality, and my dad may have had some pornographic magazines. Shocker. So I would go to work with him and would dig around his desk because I was bored at the asphalt company. And so I found some pornographic magazines, and I was more intrigued by the male figures in those magazines. Um, but, anyways, I lost my train of thought. That's fun.
Let's go back to pornographic material for 100. Okay.
Wow. Um, So at one point in time, my family found gay porn on the family computer because that's what we had at that point in time. Um, and at the time, I didn't know what clearing the browser history or cache or any of that was. And so they typed in something in the search bar, and apparently the gay porn site that I found had come up. And my mom at that point asked me point blank if I was gay, and I of course said no because I wasn't even sure what gay was, even still, um, or didn't understand what coming to terms with that was. So I denied it, and that was kind of that point of telling my family that I was not gay, even though they had found other evidence that maybe I was, and I just wasn't able to acknowledge it at that point.
You said it piqued your interest. I feel like it piqued something in your pants.
I can't.
So what fears or concerns held me back from coming out was just I was raised extremely religious, like extremely. So I figured if I was to come out and accept all of the feelings I had inside, that my family would totally disown me and want absolutely nothing to do with me. But more importantly, Jesus Christ himself would want nothing to do with me.
According to your mother.
So that was a really, really big, hard battle that I dealt with for a really long time. So that was definitely my biggest fears or concerns. And I feel like that kind of goes into the next question of how did your environment shape your journey? I was raised extremely religious, like I said. My mom was always the choir director. My dad was the organ player or piano player at our church, always, still is to this day. Well, not our church, his church. Um, so that was definitely really hard because being gay was not okay at all. So that was something that I really, really struggled with for the longest time. And I would say that, I really, that wasn't the case, or I really would fight those battles and I would pray really, really hard to make all of it go away and just to be so called normal because we were all raised to be missionaries. I've been on many mission trips as a child to build churches and help others, and I don't regret any of that. Those were amazing experiences, but I definitely was raised that that was like my number one mission in life. So that didn't really go hand in hand with the whole being gay aspect. So that was really hard for a really long time. And then when I was probably like 16 ish, then I kind of knew that I really couldn't pray this away anymore. And it was real. And I had to basically be me and figure out what all of that meant. So that was just a really, really hard journey for me. And sometimes I still battle with that because I don't feel like my family are the biggest supporters. But at the end of the day, I'm a grown man and I have to do what's best for me and what's best for my family now. And regardless of what they may think, um, most importantly is what I think. And that's, at the end of the day, I have to answer for me. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I think the only thing I can add to that, because again, I was raised super religious, maybe not quite as religious as you. But one thought I had while you were talking was when I was younger, because being in a super Southern, super religious, Southern Baptist of all religions household and environment, uh,
But Southern Baptist is the only religion.
apparently, at least that's how we were raised. Um, there were times where I had thoughts of, and quote unquote prayed, I guess, that I wished that I was a girl because I knew that I had feelings or had some type of interest in men. Not that I felt trans, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with. Completely support our trans community. I never, like looking back on it, I never thought that I was actually a female. I just, that was just the quote unquote normal thing, as if you liked a boy, that you should be a female. So there were times that I would pray that I would just wake up tomorrow and be a girl so that it would be normal to like a guy. Um, but otherwise, like that was, other than what we've both said, that was the only other thought I kind of had on that. So let's move on to like when we actually thought about coming out. Who did you come out to first and how did it go?
Well,
This should be fun.
there's a lot of firsts in this. So I came out to my brother's first wife. Earlier it was my sister's first husband. Now my brother's first wife. You see, there's a pattern in my family.
It's complex.
And how did it go? Well, that's interesting. My brother was at work, and honestly, my brother and I didn't really have a good relationship for the longest time.
Y'all do now.
We do now. No, and right now was great. But for the longest time, we didn't. And that's okay. He had a lot of shit he had to deal with, and I totally understand that. We all were raised, in the same household, and there's a lot to take in. Um, and so I was with my sister in law at the time, and she kind of pressured me into it. And it honestly was the first person I ever come out to. And so she kept asking me, and I was just kind of like, well, this is crazy. Like, why are you asking me? And so finally I told her. And I made her promise that she wouldn't tell anybody. And she was like, absolutely not. I won't tell anybody. This Your secret's safe with me. And then 24 hours later, my brother came around, who, once again, I didn't have a great relationship with at the time. He was like, he picked me up and we went somewhere. I don't remember where. And it was kind of weird because, like I said, we really didn't talk too much then. And we were driving in his Eclipse, and he was like, Christy told me you're gay. And I was like, that bitch. Because she told me she wasn't going to tell anybody. And I was just kind of like, yeah, well, I am. And he was like, no, it's cool. I really didn't understand why you told her. And then we just kind of talked it out about like, well, we don't have the best relationship. And he was just like, I'm cool with it. Like, you are who you are, and I love you absolutely no matter what. I just want you to know that. And like, that honestly meant a lot to me because, once again, the way we were raised, that was not okay at all. Anything outside of the bulleted pattern that we were raised with was not okay. So that, really meant a lot to me. I mean, of course, I was pissed that lying ass bitch told my secret. But also, that's part of the reason she was the first wife and not the last wife. So, anyways,
Last meaning current.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of a hard pill to swallow because, I mean, I thought my secret was safe, and that's a very, as you all know, I don't really like being vulnerable, even at a young age. And so I thought that vulnerable state that I was in, she had my back, and she absolutely didn't 100%. But I don't really know if she ever had anybody's back. And she's been married many times since then, so I don't even know if she has her own back. But anyways, so that was kind of how it went. How about you?
So we were drinking and partying in the kitchen at Spring Street, which was my first home in North Carolina. I think we've talked about this before. I moved in with Matt, who is my best friend's boyfriend, and I thought I was in love with her. Um, and I mean, I obviously do love her because she's my best friend, and we've reconnected recently, which has been amazing. Uh, but I remember being there with my roommate, his girlfriend, and Miss Molly. And it was just random. Like I was sitting on my laptop in the corner of the kitchen. We had a little like bar top type table, bistro table. Um, and I think I had my laptop. I was probably on gay.com cruising boys while we were drinking.
Shocker.
Shut up. Um, and I remember Matt had the refrigerator open, getting more wine out. It was probably Franzia, because we've told you before we've drank plenty of Franzia in our past. Um, and I just kind of blurted out, I'm gay. And I'll never forget Matt's face when he stood up over the top of the refrigerator and just had this shocked look on his face. Like, not disappointed, but just in shock. And then Molly was standing there and she was like, Bitch, I knew because there was the time you were sleeping in my bed and your phone kept going off. And I pulled it up because we had the same phone and she thought it was hers. And she was like, There's this boy texting. And I didn't know who the fuck it was. And then I realized that it was your phone. And plus, no straight man's ever laid in bed with me and not tried to do other things than just sleep. And bitch, I was rolled up to the wall. I was not trying to cuddle. I was not trying to do anything because, honey, I'm not interested in your boobs or your vagina. So she knew before I realized it myself. But that was my first time of actually saying I'm gay. It was super supportive. It was fun. I mean, wine was involved, so I'm sure it was very lighthearted. But I'll never forget the look on Matt's face when he stood up from the behind the refrigerator door when I said that, because I think that was it wasn't even, I don't think it was even in conversation or anything. It just kind of came out, and just the look on his face was priceless. Again, not in a disrespectful way, just not something that he expected to come out of my mouth at that point in time.
How old were you in that moment?
21,
Okay.
I think. Yeah, 21.
I was probably 15 in the story I just told.
So Ben came to the realization a lot sooner than I did.
Yeah, but I mean, that was just like, just to those few people. And when I just kind of held it in. Well, I mean, I say that I kind of held it in until, I mean, I also got a job at Old Navy at 15. So then I kind of like told my friends. I didn't go out to my family until probably 16 or 17.
Well, why don't you talk about that coming out to your family? Because that's a fun story. And then I'll tell mine.
Okay, so like when I came out to my friends at Old Navy, like I never really, I was only in this religious bubble. So like I really didn't know this like secular world, as my mom would say. Um, so when I started working at Old Navy, that was a really, really, really big eye opener because I was homeschooled also. So like I really didn't have like, I only had religious friends, only church friends, I only had everything that I was taught. I lived in a very VeggieTale kind of world. So when I started working there, of course, you know, it was a eye opener, and I met my first lesbian. And that was Charlotte, who I worked with, who was phenomenal, who I'm still friends with to this day. And I had a game manager, Carl, who was like very out and proud.
Honey, and y'all still bicker back and forth on Facebook, and I love it.
Tonight, actually, we still were. So
By the way, I've never met Carl, but I feel like I know him.
that part. So it was just kind of like, it was just very big eye opener to see that like this was the world and this is how people live their life, and like this could be, you know, part of me. And so definitely when I was working there, many boys would come in and flirt with me, and I was just kind of like, ha, 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 lol. And then I kind of fit into it, and then you know, then I, you know, I don't really think I really had to come out there because I feel like many people kind of approached me, or it was just kind of like like, oh well, it was just like passing conversation of being like, oh, we like boys, blah blah blah. Like, what did you think of this boy that came in? He was a register one. He told me you're really fucking cute, blah blah blah. And I was like, hold on, what? Like, how do you know? Like, I am straight, honey. I mean, not really, but you know, I was living that persona.
Bitch, your frosted tips and your popped collar and your sunglasses did not scream heterosexual.
You left out tan from the gods. Okay?
That's right, because everybody would come up to you talking Spanish, thinking that you were Hispanic.
Well, that tan was flawless, and I don't I'm not mad at him about it. Um, but I mean, so that was kind of like a aha moment, just kind of be like, okay, well, they already know, and like they're totally accepting of it, and like I don't even have to tell them. So like that was just kind of bizarre to me. So I mean, of course, that was great, but then my family, like, I would get really close to telling them, and they would have a really hard time with it. And they would just be like, "But you like girls," and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, totes. I'm totes mask. I'm totes straight."
Totes.
Like, my white seashell necklace doesn't tell you anything. So, like,
Because that was grinder back in the day. Is if you had a white puka necklace, that
correct.
that was the sure sign of homosexuality.
Correct. So that was like a really big battle. And then, like, I would go through battles of, I would date guys that were much, much older, like extremely older than me.
Like twice his age.
Hey, like what I like. Anyways, um, so I would date them, and then like I would become friends with a girl that I worked with, and I would be around her all the time. And then my family would treat me really great. And so I'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so then I'd be like, maybe I can make this work. Maybe I can pray the gay away again. And so then I would date them for a little bit. And then I'd be like, you know what? This, like, I'm not happy. And I would always have a guy on the side, honestly. Like, I'm not saying I was trying to be some cheating bastard or anything, but like, I was honestly trying to figure out my peace and my happiness. And that was really, really hard. So then it finally got to the point where, like, I don't know, I was probably 17, and I worked with a girl, Susanna, and she approached me, and I tried to be like, I tried to act like I was into her 100%. And she was like way, way older than me. I mean, she's hot, but she was way older than me. She had kids and all the things. And so one night I was over there, and she sat me down. She was like, "You're gay." And I was like, "What? No, ew, gross, get away from me." And she was like, "No, you're gay. I know it." And she was like, "You need to live your truth." And I was like, distraught. I was like, "What do you like? What?" And um, that was just very like bizarre to me that somebody would know, because I thought I was very good at like hiding it, because I worked at the same place my mom worked at, and it was an assisted living facility. So I was like, well, if she knows, then like other people know there, and like my mom's gonna find out, and like I'm trying to be straight, you know. And it was just, it was really hard. And so, and honestly, she only knew that because she dared me to go outside to my car one night to get something. I don't even remember. It was like a stupid game. And then she locked me outside, and she went through my phone. And at that time, your phone didn't have a lock code because I'm old. And it was my LG, like, what was the one on the keyboard that was orange?
I never had an
Envy? I
LG,
don't know.
whatever. It wasn't a
Oh,
smartphone.
excuse me for being lower than you. Ugh. Anyways,
Had Motorola, bitch.
ugh. So she went through my phone when I was outside. And then when I came back in, that's when she like approached me and all of that. And I was like, ugh. So we went like a couple of weeks with like knowing the secret. And I would see her at work, and like she was friends with my mom and like all the things. And like she knew everybody I knew. And then one night she texted me, and she was like, "You have to come out. Like, you have to tell your family." And I was like, "You're insane." And she's like, "You have to." And then, I mean, I feel like she kind of bribed me with it, because she was like, "If you do, then like we can go out to the club, and like you're going to meet somebody, and like all the things." I'm like, honestly, like, that was truthfully exactly what I needed, was like for me to live my truth, like bribe a boy in front of me, honestly. Like at that age, hell, sometimes still to this age,
I
like
can't.
that's just, I don't know. And so my mom was working, and like I sat my dad down, and I just kind of told him. And like my brother, of course, had already known from his bitch of a first wife. And then my sister knew, but like she really wasn't accepting of it. And like that was kind of like a wishy washy situation. I mean, I knew like she supported like whatever I wanted, but like we all were just raised really weird. And I won't say weird, we just, we were raised really strict, I guess is the better word. Um, and so my dad was like nice about it, but he was like, you really need to go to therapy and you need to be willing to do all of these things. And I was just kind of like, meh, meh. He was like, you have to tell your mom. And so like I called my mom and like she was nice about it at first.
Because she was around other people.
That was like it was really hard for sure. And I mean that was like 17 years old. And then like even after that, like I dated boys, but like my family kind of shut me out and they really didn't want a whole lot to do with me. I mean, I lived there, but like I wasn't included in all the things. It was just like I just lived there and I worked multiple jobs because I wanted nice things and my family did like I wasn't raised I wasn't handed money by any means. So I would always work 3 and 4 jobs. I drove a brand new car. I wanted a new phone. I wanted nice clothes. Literally, I worked 7 days a week for the longest time and I went to school. So then it kind of came to a point where like I became friends once again with a girl that I worked with, and she was cool. Whatever, we got along good, and my family started treating me a lot better when I dated her. Like I was included in all of the things. Like I wasn't an outcast anymore, and I was invited to literally everything. And like it wasn't like a you're invited if you go to church kind of thing. It was like, oh well, you're dating Brandy, so like you Brandy with an I, of course. Anyways, so
With a heart over the eye, I'm sure.
I'm sure. So that was kind of like, okay, well, I can do this. I can like put myself on the back burner because I don't matter. Because once again, I put everybody else first. You already know this. If you listen to the episodes, you know the drill. So I dated her for a little bit. And whenever she would want to, have sex, I'd be like, oh my God, no, 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 we have to wait till marriage. Like,
Did you say that to the boys you were dating?
absolutely not. Anyways, for them, I was already going to hell. So let me do what I want to do. Anyways, so the more and more I was around her and my family, and like I said, we worked together, so we around each other all the time. It was really great. I mean, it was like this relationship with my family I'd never had before. And so then I fell at work one day and I had to go to the hospital and she didn't want to come with me. And that was like a huge ordeal for me because I was like, why would you like what's going on? And at that point, I had given her we hadn't been dating that long. I kind of gave her a ring. Because I was like, if this is how I'm treated, this is how I want to be treated forever. Like my family adores me, they love me, all the things. So like I need to do what's right. This is what I was taught.
Side note, he still had the ring in the center console of his terrible Subaru Impreza, which was the new car he referred to, which was great for him, but I hated it. But it was still in the center console when we met.
Okay.
Just saying.
Three, couple things. One is I got the ring back. Okay. And I didn't even get to that part of the story yet because you just went ahead and ruined it.
Sorry.
Second part was that car was brand fucking new. Okay. I would still drive that car to this day.
I hated it.
That 2007 blue Impreza wagon. She was pretty, honey.
Was she?
Third part was I didn't even want to tell Dustin that I had been engaged not too long before I met him to a girl, and my brother just spilled the beans one day, and I was like, wow, he's never going to talk to me again. But here we are.
We're still here.
Okay, so back to the original part of the story where I was rudely interrupted. I was in the hospital for hours and hours and hours, and then my car was at the girl was engaged to his house. I went back to pick it up and I went inside to get my keys and she was fucking a guy on her pool table. And I was like, oh my God, what? But she also told me he was gay. So like he was gay, I was gay, it was the whole thing. Clearly she had a type. Anyways, so I just left. I got my car, like I grabbed my keys and I left. And then the next day we texted and she was like, yeah, I guess you don't want to be with me anymore. And I'm like, well, what? And she was like, he also said you're his type. And I'm like, but you like he fucked you, like it was a whole cluster. And really, all I was concerned about was getting back my limited edition Old Navy denim jacket from her that she had borrowed.
I can't.
So I got that in my ring back and I left. Never saw her again. So, fun story.
It's a long story.
Sorry about it. That's what you got.
So I need to go back a little bit on my story. So because it reminded me when you were talking about your friend at work, Susanna. Um, so I guess the first person that I came out to actually, or that helped me realize my sexuality, was a friend that I met at work. She was the first person that saw potential in me when I was looking for my first job in Charlotte. She took me under her wing. And then as we grew closer, um, we moved companies together and she was promoted and she pulled me in her office one day and she was like, look, we need to talk. We're close enough at this point. You're gay and you just need to kind of come to terms with that. And I'm here for you. I will support you. I will do whatever I can to make sure that you're okay. But I need you to know that you're okay in your own skin. And she was not only the best friend that I ever could have asked for in that point in time, she was also and still is a huge mentor to me in my personal and professional life. So, Danielle, I'm sure you're listening, but you're the one that helped me realize, and I know you know that, Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin forever. So she'll get that. The rest of you probably won't, but it's fine. Um, but she was probably the first person that helped me understand and know that it was okay to be okay with my sexuality. So that was the prequel, I guess, to me actually coming out to my roommates at the time. So coming out to my family was, I went to Johnson & Wales University and in Charlotte for business, not for culinary, even though that's what they're known for, which often confuses people because I love to cook. Side note, my ADD is ADDing tonight. Anyways, I had to take a semester off from Johnson and Wales to get caught up because of the way this structure was done with the beginning of a university in Charlotte. So I had to go to UNCC to catch up on some credits. And I'll never forget this. I was in my Explorer, the same one we referred to in a previous episode.
Oh my God.
Um, so I had a couple of hours in between classes, and I would always go to the parking deck and take a nap in my Explorer because I was working full time, going to school full time, and could never get a full night's sleep. So I would go to my Explorer in the afternoon when I had a couple hours in between classes and sleep because it wasn't enough time for me to go back to work and then to get back to class. So one day after talking to Danielle, coming out to my roommates, my mom called me for something and she was like, something's off. What's wrong? Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to tell you. Um, but you're not wrong. And her first thing was, so is, so my uncle on my dad's side is gay. His name's Liam. And he essentially black sheeped himself from the family because I feel like, and I understand it because it was a different day and time when he was a gay man. But after knowing my grandparents, they and they would always talk about him. They would have never rejected him from the family. They were super supportive of him, even with not knowing where he was or what his life was. They were always supportive of him. Um, Anyways, my mom was like, so, and I didn't even say anything about my sexuality. I guess she just sensed it and was like, are you saying you're like your Uncle Liam? And I was like, yeah, yep, yeah, I am. And it was an awkward silence for what seemed like 45 years. And she finally was like, but you told me you weren't gay, because back to my previous conversation of them finding the gay porn on or on the family computer and me denying it. Um, I'd never lied to my mom before, and she was super surprised by this because I'd told her that I was not gay, and I think she would have been fine if I had told her then that I was. Um, so it was a complete shock for her. Um, she went down the whole rabbit hole of what did I do wrong? How did I fail you? All the things. And none of that was true. Um, I was born this way, and there's nothing that would have changed that. The only thing that would have altered that was just the environment that I was raised in, and not that it was wrong or bad or indifferent. It was just a very heterosexual environment, being in the church and being raised in the South. Homosexuality just was not a common thing. So it was shocking to her, not that she wasn't supportive. Um, and then she told me, she was like, "You've got to tell your father. I'm not breaking this news to him." I was like, "Oh fuck, got to have this conversation with my dad." And so a day or two later, my mom told me, she was like, "I couldn't keep it in because I lived in Charlotte. They lived in Mississippi." So we had another conversation, and she was like, "I couldn't keep it in. I had to tell your dad." My dad's response was, "Why are you so surprised?"
Mm-hmm. Because he remembered him twirling around the Christmas tree.
Fuck off. But he's not wrong, I guess, because my dad grew up with his brother, who is also a gay man, even though he's estranged essentially from the family, not by anybody's will other than his own. Um, I guess my dad just picked up on a lot of that and was, I won't say more accepting, but acknowledged it, I guess is the better word, for me being gay, because he recognized that way before I even knew. And I think my mom really did before that too. It was just the fact that I had point blank told her no, I was not gay, and she took that as fact, regardless of what the surroundings were and what she actually felt or knew. Because in later conversations, she has told me, like, I've known, it's, you just told me that you weren't gay, so I was going off of that. Um, but anyways, that's kind of where I came out to my family and my first interactions with that. All right, so that was quite a bit of information. So let's move on to the next. What was your worst reaction you got, and how did you deal with it?
So, like I said earlier, my mom was okay with it at first. And then when I told my friends that she was okay with it, they were like, "You sure?" And I was like, "She won't be for long." And so she called me probably a couple weeks later. She was working one night. And she just started
She
with,
at that point was not around other people.
correct. And she just started with, like, and for those of you who know my mom, she's a little different when she's around other people. And I can normally tell by her tone who she's around. And she just said, like, she was like, "Well, if you're gay, I just need to know, are you a giver or a taker? Because I need to know."
Why she needed to know that is beyond any of our understanding.
And my response was, "My mother always told me it was better to give than to receive." And she really didn't love that. But, and how did I deal with it? I mean, I was waiting for like the blow up. So then I feel like once it was there, I was like, okay, like I've come out, and like that's it. Like that's the biggest of the big, and I can move on.
So I really don't have anything to add that I haven't already talked about in my previous things about, like, what was the worst reaction, because I think my mom's was the worst, but it really wasn't all that bad. So I think we've covered my part of that, if you will.
So do you think coming out changed any of your relationships?
N- Um, in my family, yes, because my immediate family knows of my sexuality, but my extended family, so grandparents, aunts, uncles, all of that, do not quote unquote know. Um, and that was at the request of my parents, just because of religious backgrounds, all of that. And apparently, my parents had made some comments before about homosexuality, and it was not received very well. So it was decided, and I agreed because I lived 12 hours away at the time. It didn't affect my everyday life, so it was fine. Whatever we needed to do to make things fine. Um, I will say that there's no way that my extended family doesn't know. I mean, my grandparents send Ben a birthday card and Christmas card and all the things. My aunt and uncle are on my mom's side. My grandparents on my mom's side is who I was referring to. My aunt and uncle on my mom's side have been super supportive and done the same thing. Um, on my dad's side, unfortunately, I found out after they passed that they would have been more than accepting. And that's where I think that my uncle, being estranged by his own will, um, was maybe not the best move on his part, but again, I understand where he was coming from, being in the time that he was coming out as being a gay man. Um, but even my step grandmother made a comment at my grandfather's funeral of, "Why have you never brought, like, she's never to this day met my husband, and we've been together for 16 years." And it's because I didn't know how that would be received, but she knows. She has always been accepting, even without my knowledge. And my grandmother on my dad's side did meet Ben,
And she
and
was absolutely wonderful.
she was amazing. I love my Grammy and always will. Not that I don't love my other grandparents, but Grammy knew and accepted, and knew because she just knew, not because anybody had to say anything. It
Honey, she
was,
remembered him twirled around the Christmas tree.
Jesus Christ, this fucking Christmas tree. Um, but my grandparents and extended family know by their own accord. It's not because I came out to them, because it just didn't feel that it was the right or appropriate thing to do by my family, and I wanted to respect that. So they know, but they don't know.
And I would say, I mean, your Grammy treated me amazingly, and I had a Grammy too. So, of course, she'll always hold, both of them hold a very special place in my heart.
Not Flossie.
Um, your Grammy was just as concerned with the fact of me as she was with Popeyes that we brought for lunch. So I'll
She
love her
did
even
love a
more for that.
Popeyes.
And she wanted her Virginia Slim. Honey, give me one too.
She did.
However, your grandparents now to this day treat me just as equally as any of their other grandchildren. And I don't have grandparents left. So that really speaks volume. And that's a huge deal to me. And I will always be very grateful for them. Um, as
And I have
far
to say
as
the same for your grandparents too. When they were here, they were always respectful. They treated me just like anybody else in the family, although it may be distant, but that wasn't any different than anybody else in the family.
so
Flossie didn't know who anybody was most of the time. God bless her. And my mom and pop, I mean, they would call and sing to me just like they would anybody else. Um, so I appreciate and respect them, even though they may not have quote unquote known our relationship status. They still treated me
they know. They might we call you Justin, but
well.
they
I've
still
been
knew.
called worse.
They, well, there's that. They definitely knew though. So looking back now, would you do anything differently?
The only thing I think I would do differently is not necessarily for coming out with anybody that I did, it would just be with myself. And if I could tell my younger self something, it would be it's okay to be who you are. Because I knew at a very young age, even back to after school care with Robert and sleeping next to each other, like it obviously at that young age, there wasn't anything sexual, but there is a bond there. And growing up and understanding that it's okay to be gay, I wish I would have come to terms myself sooner than what it actually happened with. I think that's the only thing I would change. Coming out to the people that I did and how it happened, I don't think I would change any of that. It's just I wish I would have known and understand myself sooner so that I could have lived more of my life of who I actually was and not have to hide myself.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I would like to say absolutely fucking not, for sure. However, the only thing I think I would change would just really be the girls that I drug along in this journey when I was young that were friends to me, that were really supportive, that I kind of used as pawns because I didn't know any better. And I hate that I hurt them because that was never my intentions, especially Melissa. I mean, she was amazing and she was a really, really good friend to me and really supported me through all of my craziness. She met a lot of my boyfriends, so I'm sure when I said I like you and I want to be with you, she was very shocked. So was I. um, so I think that was just something that I would kind of change. I know that I came out like much younger than you. Um, but I wish when I would have come out, I would have come out like 1000% and really known then that that was my journey, I guess, and accepted that. But also, I was raised very differently, and it's my past, and I can't change it, so I have to be on board with it. It's kind of crazy to think that that was, 20 years ago, and here we are. And it's kind of bizarre to think that people older than me still deal with this battle of wanting to come out and dealing with that. If you're listening to this and you are struggling with that, I really hope that you can battle that and come out and be who you are, regardless of whatever it is. Just be yourself because that's not a fun journey to be through, especially the older you get. And you are you, and that's beautifully true. So just honestly, just be yourself and do
And there will
you.
always be people that will support you, even if they're not your blood. A lot of people say that blood is thicker than anything. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. Not that my family hasn't been super supportive, but I know that there are families out there that are not super supportive. Um, and you can find your chosen family that will be your rock and will be there and support you regardless of what's going on, whether it's your sexuality or anything else. Um, there's people out there that will support you.
1000%. And I think that we've talked a lot about our families coming out, and that was like, as far as myself, that was 20 years ago. So, things look very differently now, and it may not be to the extreme that I wish that it was, but I feel like I definitely come from a supportive family. And I know that they would support me no matter what. And they've supported me throughout, you know, Dustin myself. They love Dustin just as much as they love me. Sometimes I feel like they love him more. Also,
I'm not sure about that.
in our throuple journey, you know, the one that they really met, they were 100% on board with. They didn't know exactly who he was in the beginning, and there was a reason why I wanted that, but they were supportive, and I greatly appreciate that. So I can't really be mad at any of that or change it.
So I think that we've talked a lot this episode.
We've definitely overextended our time.
Yes. So I guess it makes up for the fact that we skipped for last week because we're at least twice as long as what we would like to record. So
You're welcome.
just consider it 2 weeks in one. But that's kind of where we're at as far as our coming out stories. As we're sharing our coming out stories and celebrating Pride, I think it's important to also take a moment to recognize that not everyone is in the same place on their journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think some are still figuring things out. Some are in a safe environment to come out, and others just are not ready, and that's okay. Pride isn't just about being loud and proud, it's also about making space for everyone to exist and feel seen, no matter where they are.
Exactly. Coming out is personal. It's not a checklist, it's not a race. Whether you're out and proud or quietly holding space for yourself, you still belong here. You're still valid. You're still loved. And this month is still for you.
And for those listening who maybe don't get it or struggle to understand, especially family members or friends, just remember you don't have to understand someone fully to love them and support them. You just have to lead with empathy and love.
Exactly. You don't have to agree with someone's experience to be kind. And if someone trusts you enough to be open and honest about who they are, that really is not a burden on you. It's honestly an honor.
So if you're someone who's not out yet, know that you're not alone. You've got a community out here, and we're all rooting for you. And if you're someone who is out, remember, be that light for others. Pride is a protest, it's a celebration, it's healing, and it's most powerful when we lift each other up.
We see you, we love you, and we'll be sipping and telling our stories until everyone feels safe enough to tell theirs too. We know this was a long episode, but we appreciate you listening and hearing our stories. And if you're the ones that are out there that are still struggling with your sexuality or need someone to talk to, we're here. You've got our socials, you've got our email. If you don't, it's Sip.HappensPodcast@outlook.com. Feel free to reach out. We are skipping our other segments that we normally do because we felt that this was an important topic to talk about, especially for the month of June as we celebrate Pride Month. So thank you for joining us and celebrating Pride with us too. We love you all and thank you so much for your support.